It was a sunny afternoon when Alex decided to take his bike out for a spin. He wasn't in a rush. He never was when he rode. He just liked the feeling of the wind in his hair and the smooth pavement beneath his tires. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional car or jogger passing by. It was peaceful, exactly what he needed after a long week of school and endless assignments. As he pedaled through the park, his earbuds in place, Alex was lost in his music, unaware of the commotion happening nearby. 3 bikers, their motorcycles growling like beasts, had pulled into the small parking lot near the entrance. They weren't exactly the friendliest-looking group. Their black leather jackets, tattoos, and tough guy attitude made them seem out of place in this quiet part of town. They weren't here for anything good, and Alex didn't realize that they had already noticed him. The bikers, bored and looking for trouble, began circling the area. At first, Alex didn't pay them any mind. He figured they were just hanging around, maybe waiting for something or someone. He was used to seeing people loitering in the park, even if they didn't exactly fit in. But something about these guys felt different, like they were waiting for the right moment to stir up trouble. Just as Alex passed the entrance of the park, one of the bikers, a tall man with a scruffy beard and tattoos running down his arms, revved his engine. The noise was loud, almost deafening, and it cut through Alex's music. Startled, Alex pulled one earbud out, trying to see what was going on. Before he could react, the biker gunned the engine again, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The other 2 bikers followed, revving their bikes as well, and within seconds, they had blocked his path. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't scared, not yet. He'd been in a few tight spots before, but this felt different. These guys didn't seem like the kind who would just let him go without causing a scene. One of the bikers, the one with the tattoos creeping up his neck, took a step forward, a smirk playing on his lips. "Hey, kid," he said, his voice rough and full of attitude. "You think you own this street or something?" Alex's stomach twisted, but he kept his cool. He wasn't about to show fear. "Nah," he replied, trying to sound as casual as possible. "Just riding through." The biker didn't seem satisfied with that answer. He took another step closer, his boots hitting the ground hard with each step. "I don't think you're allowed to just ride around here like you own the place," he said, his voice low and threatening. The other 2 bikers snickered, clearly enjoying the way the situation was unfolding. Alex could feel the tension building, and he knew this wasn't going to end well if he didn't do something. The biker with the tattoos leaned over and grabbed the handlebar of his bike, yanking it sideways, making it wobble. "You ain't going anywhere until we say so," he sneered. At that moment, Alex realized they weren't just playing around. They were trying to intimidate him, maybe even worse. But he wasn't about to let them get away with it. He had grown up with his fair share of bullies, and he had learned over the years how to deal with people like this. The problem was, he didn't know what these bikers were capable of. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze. The bikers were sizing him up, and Alex was calculating his next move. He could feel the pressure mounting in his chest. He had to think fast. One thing he knew for sure. He wasn't going to back down. Not today. The air around Alex felt thick with tension as the biker with the tattoos stood over him, a twisted grin on his face. The other 2 bikers were just a few steps behind, their eyes locked on Alex, like they were predators sizing up their prey. Alex stayed calm, his grip on the handlebars tight. He wasn't about to let them see him panic. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Staying cool was the only way out of this. "What's your name, kid?" the biker asked, his voice low but filled with menace. Alex wasn't sure if he was looking for an answer or just trying to make him feel small. Either way, it didn't matter. "Alex," he said, his voice steady. He didn't want to show any weakness, not now. "Just trying to get home." The tattooed biker chuckled, shaking his head. "You think you can just roll through here and do whatever you want? This is our turf, kid." The words were slow and deliberate, as if he was savoring the fear he was trying to stir up. Alex felt the knot in his stomach tighten. He had been in situations before where people tried to assert their power over him, but this time felt different. There were 3 of them, and they weren't backing down. He could tell they were just getting started. One of the bikers, a tall guy with a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days, cracked his knuckles, taking a step closer. "We don't like people riding through here without paying some respect," the second biker added, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You might want to rethink what you're doing, unless you want trouble." The 3 of them started laughing, clearly enjoying the fact that Alex was alone and outnumbered. He could feel his pulse quicken. They had made their move. There was no turning back now. Alex knew he had to act fast before this turned into something worse. For a moment, he thought about trying to talk his way out of it, maybe convincing them to just let him go. But that wasn't going to work. These guys were looking for a fight, and they weren't the type to back off easily. Alex's mind began to race, running through the options he had. He knew he couldn't just stand there and let them push him around. He had to do something. The biker with the tattoos stepped forward again, this time putting a hand on Alex's shoulder, giving him a shove. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" His words were laced with mockery, and it made Alex's blood boil. They were trying to humiliate him, make him feel small. But Alex wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. "Leave me alone," Alex said, his voice a little firmer now. He could feel the muscles in his body tensing, ready to react. His heart was pounding, but he kept his breath steady. He had trained for moments like this. It wasn't the first time he had faced a bully, but this felt different. These bikers weren't just looking for a verbal confrontation. They were looking for a fight. The biker with the tattoos chuckled again, clearly not taking Alex seriously. "What's that? You want me to leave you alone?" he repeated, his face twisting into a cruel smile. "Maybe I should teach you a lesson in respect, kid." That was the moment Alex knew he couldn't back down. If he did, they'd never stop. They'd just keep pushing him around. He had trained in self-defense, not to be a fighter, but to protect himself when it counted. And this was one of those moments. He had to stand his ground, no matter what. Alex's eyes flicked between the 3 bikers. They were all a little too close now, their hands hovering near their pockets, likely ready to pull something out. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to make a move before things escalated any further. His body tensed, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. But for now, he stayed still, watching and waiting. He wasn't going to let them get the upper hand. Not today. The biker with the tattoos took another step closer, his eyes narrowing as he looked Alex up and down. "You sure you want to keep doing this?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. His hand was still on Alex's shoulder, the pressure hard enough to make him feel the weight of the situation. Alex knew they were trying to push him, to break his confidence and make him second-guess himself. But he wouldn't let that happen. What the bikers didn't know, what they couldn't see, was that Alex wasn't just some kid who had never been in a real fight before. He had spent the last couple of years training in Krav Maga, a martial art focused on self-defense and survival. It was practical and brutal, and he'd learned how to handle situations like this. His instructor, a former Special Forces soldier, had drilled into him that when faced with aggression, the best option was always to stay calm, assess the situation, and strike fast. And that's exactly what Alex was planning to do. As the biker's grip tightened on his shoulder, Alex's mind went into autopilot. He had practiced countless hours, running through scenarios, perfecting his reflexes. All that training had led to this moment. He wasn't scared, even though his heart was pounding. This wasn't a time for hesitation or second-guessing. It was time to act. With the biker still too close, Alex knew he had to make the first move. He couldn't wait for them to escalate it any further. In a split second, he shifted his weight, turning slightly to the side as he ducked under the biker's arm. He used the biker's own force against him, pushing him off balance. Before the biker could react, Alex quickly kicked his leg out, sweeping the man's feet from under him. It was a move he had practiced over and over, and it worked just as well in real life as it did in training. The biker hit the ground with a thud, a grunt of surprise escaping his lips. He was momentarily stunned, his hand reaching for his knee, which had taken the brunt of the fall. Alex didn't waste a second. He had already spun around to face the other two bikers, who were now watching in disbelief. They had expected him to back down, to freeze. But instead, he was standing tall, ready to defend himself. The second biker, the tall one with the worn leather jacket, took a step forward, his face dark with anger. "You think that's funny, huh?" he growled, his fists clenched at his sides. He was clearly pissed off, and Alex could tell that this wasn't going to end peacefully if they kept going down this road. Alex didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He was already calculating his next move, mentally running through his options. He could feel the adrenaline rushing through him. But he wasn't letting it cloud his judgment. The key to getting out of this without getting hurt was to stay focused and move quickly. The third biker, who had been silent up until now, stepped back, seemingly unsure of what to do. He looked from Alex to the biker on the ground, and then to his friend. Something in his eyes shifted, a hint of doubt. Maybe he wasn't as eager to fight as the others were, but the other two bikers were already committed to the confrontation. Alex's breathing slowed as he locked eyes with the biker in front of him. He wasn't about to make the first move again. This time, it was up to them to decide how far they wanted to take things. He wasn't backing down, but he wasn't going to throw the first punch either. His training had taught him the importance of controlling the situation. He knew that the more composed he remained, the more likely it was that they'd see he wasn't someone to be messed with. The biker with the tattoos, still on the ground, began to get up, his face red with anger. The two others were still sizing Alex up, trying to figure out if he was bluffing. But Alex wasn't bluffing. He wasn't some naive kid who had no idea how to defend himself. He had trained for this. Now he just had to wait for the right moment. And he could feel it coming. The biker with the tattoos was back on his feet now, his face twisted in anger. He rubbed his knee, still wincing from the fall, but the rage in his eyes was obvious. "You little jerk," he spat, glaring at Alex. "You think you're tough." His voice was low and dangerous, like a threat just waiting to be carried out. Alex didn't flinch. He knew better than to show weakness. His heart was still pounding from the adrenaline, but he kept his posture relaxed, trying to stay in control. The more calm he appeared, the more they would realize that he wasn't the easy target they thought he was. The tall biker with the worn-out jacket stepped forward, cracking his knuckles as he glared at Alex. "You really want to keep this up? Because we can make this a lot worse for you," he said, his voice filled with malice. The other biker, still standing behind them, didn't say anything, but was clearly ready to jump in if things went south. Alex's eyes flicked between the three of them. He knew they were trying to intimidate him, but he wasn't about to give in. He had been through worse situations than this before, and he had the skills to defend himself. His instructor had always taught him that the best defense wasn't just physical strength. It was knowing how to control the situation and keep your cool. And that's exactly what he was doing now. The biker with the tattoos took a step closer, his finger jabbing towards Alex's chest. "You better apologize, kid," he sneered, "or we're gonna show you what happens when you mess with us." The words were meant to provoke, to break Alex's confidence and make him back down, but it wasn't working. If anything, it was only fueling his resolve. "Apologize," Alex repeated, his voice calm, but with a sharp edge. "You guys started this. You think I'm just gonna apologize because you feel like messing with me? Not happening." The bikers exchanged a glance, their patience thinning. They hadn't expected this response. They had thought that with their tough guy act and intimidation, Alex would have been scared into submission. But he wasn't. And now the situation was about to take a turn. The biker with the tattoos clearly fed up, shoved Alex hard in the chest. It wasn't just a push. It was meant to send a message. The force of the shove was enough to make Alex stumble back a couple of steps, but he quickly regained his balance. He didn't let the push throw him off. Instead, he stood tall and firm, ready for whatever came next. "What's the matter, tough guy?" the biker taunted. "You gonna cry now?" Alex didn't answer right away. He knew that getting into a war of words with these guys wasn't going to do him any good. Instead, he took a slow breath, letting the tension in his body ease just a little. He had learned that it was best to wait for them to make the next move. They were getting more desperate, more reckless, and that was exactly what he wanted. The two bikers standing behind the tattooed one were starting to get restless, their eyes darting around as they considered whether it was time to escalate things further. Alex could tell they were starting to second-guess themselves. They hadn't expected someone to fight back this hard. They had expected an easy win, someone they could push around. But now, they were dealing with someone who wasn't going to back down. "You know what?" the tall biker said, taking a step back. "This isn't worth it. Let's just get out of here." His voice was uncertain now, and Alex could see the hesitation in his eyes. The biker with the tattoos wasn't ready to let it go just yet, though. He still had fire in his eyes, still wanted to prove something. But as he stepped forward, his friends seemed to pull back, clearly not wanting to take things further. Alex knew that they were realizing the same thing he had. This wasn't a fight worth having. The tattooed biker gave Alex one last glare before muttering under his breath, "This isn't over." But even his voice lacked the same intensity it had a few moments ago. Alex stood still, watching them carefully. He wasn't sure if they were done, or if they were just looking for another chance to jump back in. But for now, the air between them had shifted. The bikers, once confident and intimidating, were starting to second-guess their decision to pick a fight with him. And that made all the difference. The bikers seemed to be on the edge, and Alex could feel it. The tall one with the leather jacket was looking at the others like he was waiting for them to make up their minds. The tattooed biker, still angry but now unsure, stood a few feet away, rubbing his shoulder as if the fall still bothered him. Alex knew that this moment could go in any direction. The tension hung in the air, thick and heavy. Everything felt like it was on the edge of snapping. For a brief second, everything seemed to go still. The sound of the bikes idling in the background was the only noise. Alex's mind raced, thinking of his next move, trying to stay focused on what was happening around him. His legs were slightly bent, ready to react at a moment's notice. He had no idea what these bikers were going to do next, but one thing was certain: they were running out of patience. The tattooed biker looked back at the tall one, and for a moment, Alex saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. But it quickly vanished, replaced by something colder. "You sure about this?" the tattooed man asked, his voice no longer as confident as before. His eyes never left Alex, but his words were directed more at his companions. The tall biker hesitated, glancing at the other two. "I don't know, man," he muttered. "He's not scared, and we didn't come here to get humiliated." There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. "Let's just go. We don't need this today." Alex didn't move, didn't speak. He kept his eyes on the bikers, watching their every move. He wasn't about to lower his guard just because they seemed to be backing off. He had learned the hard way that people like this didn't always know when to quit. But this time, it seemed like they were second-guessing themselves. Maybe they realized they had underestimated him, or maybe they were just looking for an excuse to get out before things went further. The tattooed biker, now visibly frustrated, kicked his bike's tire, sending a loud thud through the quiet park. "This isn't over, you little punk," he grumbled, but the venom in his voice wasn't as sharp as before. He wasn't ready to let go of his anger, but he was too proud to keep pushing the situation. His buddies seemed eager to leave, though, and Alex could see that their resolve was wavering. The tall biker shook his head. "Just let it go, man. We don't need to make a scene." "Let's get out of here," he said, his tone losing its edge. He turned and began walking towards his bike. The other two bikers followed his lead, slowly starting their engines and revving them, though none of them dared to get too close to Alex anymore. For a moment, Alex just stood there, watching them as they started to leave. Part of him was expecting them to turn back, to come at him one more time. But they didn't. Slowly, the noise of their engines faded into the distance, and just like that, the situation was over. Alex stood alone, the park quiet again, save for the rustling of leaves in the wind. He took a slow, steady breath. His heart was still pounding, but the adrenaline was starting to wear off. He had stood his ground, and it had worked. They had backed off. For now, at least. But Alex knew that in places like this, with people like them, things could change quickly. He couldn't let his guard down. As he stood there, still catching his breath, a sense of calm began to wash over him. He wasn't shaken. He hadn't backed down, and he knew that if the situation had gone differently, he was ready. The training he'd spent so many hours on had paid off. He had faced his fear head-on, and it had made all the difference. Alex got back on his bike, his fingers loosely gripping the handlebars as he started pedaling away from the park. It was a quiet ride home, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed a line. Maybe they wouldn't come after him. Maybe this was over. But a part of him couldn't help but wonder, what if they came back? Would he be ready again? And if they did, would he have the strength to keep fighting back? Only time would tell. The next day, Alex woke up feeling sore. Not from a fight, but from the tension that had gripped his body the night before. His mind kept replaying the scene at the park over and over. The way the bikers had surrounded him, the anger in their voices, and the moment they finally backed off. He knew he had done the right thing, but something inside him still felt unsettled. At breakfast, his mom asked him if everything was okay. Alex just nodded and gave a small smile. "Just tired," he said. He didn't want to worry her. She had enough to deal with already. But as he picked at his food, he couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't over yet. Later that afternoon, he rode his bike to the small gym where he trained. The owner, Jake, was a tough, middle-aged guy with a kind heart. He had been Alex's mentor ever since the boy walked into the gym a couple years ago. Jake had taught him how to defend himself, how to keep his cool, and how to pick his battles. As Alex walked in, Jake noticed something was off. "You all right, kid?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead and tossing a towel over his shoulder. Alex nodded, then hesitated. "Some guys tried to mess with me yesterday. Bikers. 3 of them." Jake's expression changed. He put down the towel and leaned on the counter. What happened? Alex told him everything. How they surrounded him, how they pushed him, and how he fought back. He didn't make it sound dramatic, just the facts. When he finished, Jake looked serious. "Did you get their names?" Jake asked. Alex shook his head. No, but one had tattoos all over his arms. The tall one wore a ripped leather jacket. They looked like regular punks trying to act tough. Jake sighed and scratched his beard. "I think I know who you're talking about. They hang around the old gas station on 5th Street. Been causing trouble for a while now." Alex frowned. "You think they'll come back?" "Honestly," Jake said. "Guys like that don't like being embarrassed, especially not by someone younger and smaller. They might come back to prove a point." Alex looked down. He had hoped it was over. But hearing Jake say that made the knot in his stomach tighten. "Don't let it mess with your head," Jake continued. "You handled it well. You didn't let them control the situation. But now you've got to stay sharp. Keep your eyes open. And if you see them again, don't be afraid to walk away. Fighting should always be the last option." Alex nodded slowly. What if walking away isn't enough? Jake gave a small smile. "Then you do what you've been trained to do. And remember, you're not alone. You've got people behind you." After training, Alex left the gym feeling a little better. The talk with Jake had helped, but the warning still echoed in his mind. As he rode through the neighborhood, he kept looking over his shoulder. The streets were quiet, but every sound made him alert. He turned onto a narrow road near the park and froze. In the distance, parked near a row of trees, was a familiar motorcycle. The paint job, the handlebars, even the dent on the side. He was sure it was one of theirs. Alex stopped his bike and stayed hidden behind a fence. He didn't see anyone nearby, but the bike alone was enough to confirm his fears. They were still around. They hadn't forgotten. He took a deep breath and slowly backed away. He wasn't going to run, but he wasn't going to walk straight into danger either. He had a feeling this wasn't just a coincidence. Something was coming, and he needed to be ready. Alex didn't go to the park for the next 2 days. He stuck to main roads, stayed in busy areas, and kept his head down. Even though he tried to focus on school and his usual routine, his mind was always half alert, listening for the sound of engines or voices that seemed too familiar. It was like waiting for a storm to come back, and he didn't know when or how it would hit. But on the 3rd day, he couldn't avoid the park anymore. He had promised to help his neighbor set up a charity booth for a weekend event. He thought maybe it was safe now. Maybe the bikers had moved on. Still, as he packed his bag and got on his bike, a part of him stayed tense. The park looked peaceful at first. The sun was shining. A few kids were kicking a ball, and some joggers passed by. Alex locked his bike near the entrance and walked toward the picnic area where his neighbor was waiting. For almost an hour, everything was fine. He helped set up tables, handed out flyers, and even smiled a little. It felt good to be doing something normal again. But then, just as he was heading back to grab more boxes, he heard the deep rumble of motorcycle engines. The sound rolled through the air like thunder. He stopped in his tracks. 3 bikes. He turned slowly and saw them. Same jackets, same faces. The tattooed biker was leading them. His eyes locked onto Alex. The other 2 followed closely, their expressions cold and unreadable. Alex's heart pounded, but he didn't move. He wouldn't run. Not this time. The bikers pulled up near the edge of the park and cut their engines. People nearby noticed them, but no one said anything. Maybe they didn't sense the tension, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. The tattooed biker got off his bike and walked straight toward Alex. The tall one stayed back, arms crossed. The 3rd stood beside the bikes, scanning the area like he was watching for cops or anyone else who might interfere. "Miss me?" the tattooed one said with a smirk, stopping just a few feet from Alex. Alex stood still. "Didn't think you'd come back." "Oh, we weren't done," the biker said, voice low. "You made us look bad in front of people. Now we're here to fix that." Alex could feel eyes on them. A few parkers had started to notice the tension. His neighbor, who had been unpacking boxes, paused and looked over, sensing something was wrong. "This isn't the place," Alex said calmly. "There are families here. Kids." The biker stepped closer. "You should have thought of that before you got smart with us." Alex didn't flinch. "I didn't get smart. I defended myself." "Same thing," the biker snapped, his smile fading. "Now you've got 2 options. Say sorry, or we settle it right now." Alex took a breath. He remembered what Jake had said. Fighting should always be the last option. But if he had no choice, he had to be ready. Before he could speak, a voice shouted from behind, "Is there a problem here?" Everyone turned. It was Jake, walking toward them, calm but serious. He must have seen the bikers coming from his shop down the street. His hands were by his sides, but his presence alone changed the mood. The tattooed biker looked annoyed. "Who's this?" "Your backup." "He doesn't need backup," Jake said. "But he's got it." The other 2 bikers shifted uncomfortably. They knew Jake. Most people around the area did. He wasn't just a gym owner. He had a reputation for handling trouble the right way. The tattooed biker stepped back, frustration in his eyes. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Sure it is. Jake said. "Walk away while you still can." They stared at each other for a few seconds. Then, without another word, the bikers turned, got on their bikes, and rode off. Alex let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Thanks," he said quietly. Jake nodded. "You handled it right. Proud of you." But deep down, Alex knew it still wasn't the end, and the next time, he might not get a warning. 2 weeks passed without any sign of the bikers. Alex went back to his usual routine: school, training, and riding through the neighborhood. But something had changed in him. He wasn't looking over his shoulder anymore, but he was more aware now, more focused. It wasn't fear that stayed with him. It was caution. Every time he passed the park or the corner near the gas station, he watched carefully. Nothing seemed out of place. No motorcycles, no loud voices, no sudden threats. But Alex knew better than to let his guard down completely. The way the tattooed biker had looked at him, the way he said, "This isn't over," those words stayed with him. One Friday evening, after training at the gym, Jake handed Alex a cold bottle of water and sat down next to him on the bench. "You've improved," Jake said. "Your movements are sharper, cleaner. Your head's in the right place too." "Thanks," Alex replied, wiping sweat from his face. "I've been trying to stay ready." Jake looked at him for a moment. "You still thinking about them?" Alex nodded slowly. "I don't think they're done." They walked away, but it didn't feel like the end. Jake leaned back. "Sometimes people like that don't come back with fists. They come back in other ways, quiet ones. They wait, they plan. Just remember, you don't have to fight every battle. But if one finds you, be ready." That night, Alex sat in his room thinking about those words. It wasn't just about being able to throw a punch or defend himself. It was about staying strong inside, knowing when to stand and when to walk away. He didn't feel scared anymore. He felt prepared. The weekend came and went. Sunday afternoon, Alex decided to go for a long ride, clear his mind. The air was cool and the streets were quiet. He passed by the park, then took a longer route through the back roads. It was peaceful. As he neared a curve, he noticed something strange. A black bike, one he hadn't seen before, was parked behind a row of bushes near the trail. It didn't look like it belonged to anyone on a casual ride. It looked hidden, on purpose. Alex stopped at a distance and watched. No one was around. No voices. No movement. He didn't panic. Instead, he took out his phone and quickly snapped a photo. He sent it to Jake with a short message. "Seen this bike before? Parked near trail." Within a minute, Jake replied, "Yeah, belongs to one of them. Don't go near it. Heading your way." Alex stayed calm. He turned his bike around and rode slowly back toward the main road, keeping an eye on the path behind him. Still no sign of anyone. Just the wind in the trees and the sound of his tires on the gravel. By the time he reached the corner shop, Jake's truck pulled up. He waved Alex over and looked toward the direction of the trail. "You did the right thing," Jake said, fast thinking. Alex shrugged. "I wasn't going to wait and see who showed up." They drove back to the spot, but the bike was gone. Someone had moved it. Quietly. Quickly. It was a sign. They hadn't forgotten. They were watching. As the sun began to set, Alex felt something shift inside him. Fear didn't hold him anymore. He had learned how to stand his ground. And even if trouble came again, he wouldn't be caught off guard. He had trained for this, not just with punches and kicks, but with patience, awareness, and strength of mind. He wasn't just the kid they once tried to scare. He was ready for whatever came next.